And we are joined by Peter Mathews, Professor of Political Science at Cyprus College. First off, let's start on a bright note. A very happy Easter to you, Professor.
Happy Easter to you too, Tim.
And look, this is troubling, isn't it? Because we saw the events of January 6 after a traumatic, 18 months in the United States, both politically, the pandemic and everything else. What do you make of it?
Well, it's definitely disturbing because it's happened again within 3 months, but it's a different kind of situation. This man was mentally disturbed, and he was a lone person doing it by himself with his car. It was a terrible tragedy that the policeman died and got injured. Another one got injured, but still, it's different than what happened with the uprising on the 6th. That was far more serious, and we should look at all security measures, but this is not the same as the 6th.
Even though it was only one...
January 6th, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it was one individual, it could have been worse if the security measures and the barricades hadn't been placed where they have been placed since what happened on January 6th.
That is absolutely correct. And so all of the measures taken after January 6th really helped to minimize the damage this could have actually caused with all the barriers. So those probably have to remain in place for quite a while still.
And tributes continue to flow for the police officer himself?
Yes, it was just so tragic. Here was a man and the other one who got injured. They were people trying to protect our seat of government, trying to keep the peace, and totally innocent and strong, and yet this happened from some individual who just drove his car into them. Unbelievable. So we have to still be vigilant about these things.
Peter, George Floyd's trial, it's getting an enormous amount of headlines. It's very, very visible.
Yes, indeed, because it's so historic and all-encompassing that this was a man who was brutally, appears to many who are watching these videos at the trial, brutally murdered because the police officer, Chauvin, had put his knee on George Floyd's neck and held it there for almost 9 seconds until he suffocated. And the prosecutors are trying to prove that this was unnecessary force. It was deadly force that was applied. And they brought in testimonies from former police officers who corroborated that assessment. So it's a very strong case for the prosecution. The defense is trying to say, well, George Floyd was on drugs. He had health problems. His heart gave way. But his heart would not have given way had not Chauvin treated him so brutally with his knee on his neck. So that's something that has to be mentioned. It has. And there were also testimony of people who have viewed it. You know, Darnella Frazier, who took the video, 17-year-old young girl. She was amazing that she was able to do that, but she felt so guilty that she couldn't stop the police officer from doing this. Many observers couldn't get in there and stop the police officers from killing this man, and they have a lot of guilt on them. They're also victims, especially George Floyd, of course.
Now, Joe Biden's infrastructure plan, as we move to another subject, what do you think of it?
I think it's very much needed because the American Society of Civil Engineers estimated that we needed $2.2 trillion to just bring up our basic infrastructure to what it should be. We are ranked 13th among nations out of the 200 nations of the world. We're 13th on infrastructure. So much of it has been let to be degraded. Many of our bridges were falling apart. We had roads that had to be rebuilt. We have electric trains that we need, which we don't have. And Joe Biden's putting in $2 trillion or so on infrastructure, including supporting electric car development. He's proposing 500,000 charging stations across the country to be built, upgrade the electric grid itself, and bring in all kinds of massive investments in our freeways and highways and bridges as well. So this is very important. It'll create jobs, and it'll create 21st century jobs, hopefully more green jobs. We'll also work on school buildings and houses to be weatherized and modernized. This is really important. It's like the New Deal of the 1930s to some extent, the extent of this investment has to be done.
That's the big thing for people on the street, isn't it, Peter, is the fact that jobs will be created, and this can generate a sense of hope amongst Americans.
Yeah, yes, indeed. It'll generate hope, and it'll generate actual income, and people can have a future. And these are futuristic jobs. They're not just building, something that's going to fall apart or that's old technology. It's all going to be through new technology as well. Solar panels, all that creates new jobs to replace the old ones, like oil drilling, for example, or coal mining that's being decimated in a sense or taken away because of the need for climate change legislation. So this is going to create new technology jobs as well. And that's why people are hopeful. And as things get better with the COVID vaccine being widespread, we'll talk about that as well. That's double hope coming up here.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that because, it's been heavily criticised here. Like Australia has handled the pandemic very well, pretty much from outside looking in. And, we need to be proud of that. But the vaccine rollout isn't going all that well early on, but it's starting to go very well in the United States.
Yes, it is, because the Biden administration is focused on organization and a certain amount of.
I think we have a bit of a problem there. We've got Peter Mathews back now.
Needed at least three.
No, we'll have to leave Peter
two.
Mathews there. But as you can see on the screen, 1.53.6 million vaccines already, or vaccinations already. Is Peter back there now? I'll just double check. Oh, we'll leave Peter there. Okay, thank you so much. And as I said before, very happy Easter to